The sun hung low over Zartok Prime, casting long shadows across the massive training fields of the Academy of Warriors. Towering alien structures glistened under the light, buildings carved from black stone that shimmered with energy veins, pulsating like living creatures. On the wide-open ground below, young Predator cadets moved with precision, their movements sharp and calculated, each one showing the kind of physical skill humans could only dream of. Among them, small and fragile-looking by comparison, walked Leora, a human. Her chestnut hair was tied back in a simple braid, her eyes bright with determination. Every step she took was careful, measured, but her shoulders never slouched. In a sea of scales, claws, and towering limbs, she was an anomaly, a rare exception in an academy meant for the galaxy's fiercest young warriors. The trainers watched her with skepticism. The aliens here were proud and fierce. To see a human walk among them without fear, or at least without trembling, was almost insulting. Some whispered, "She will fail before the sun sets." Others, less vocal but equally doubtful, shook their heads at what they considered a human's foolishness. Today was the start of the first exercise, pairing cadets with predator cubs. Each cadet would train with a cub to learn trust, coordination, and combat instinct. Leora's assigned cub, Rhynek, was a young predator with sleek black fur, glowing amber eyes, and teeth sharp even for a juvenile. He was notoriously temperamental, often lashing out at anyone he sensed as weak. The moment she stepped into the arena, Rhynek growled, a deep, vibrating sound that made even the instructors freeze for a moment. The cub's stance was low and aggressive, muscles tensing as if ready to strike. Leora stopped and looked straight at him. Most humans would have flinched. She did not. Instead, she grinned. "Nice try," she said softly, her voice carrying calm confidence. The cub blinked. The trainers frowned, unsure if they were witnessing boldness or foolishness. Leora took a step closer, careful not to make sudden movements, letting her posture show she was not a threat, yet she would not retreat. The cub snarled again, sharper this time, but did not lunge. There was a pause, almost a silent conversation, and the tension was thick in the air. A few cadets whispered to each other. "The human, she's not running." One of them, a young predator named Varn, shook his head. "Humans are fragile, they can't face this. Calm will earn trust." She had studied every move, every instinct she could find about the species she was about to face. Now it was time to put that knowledge to use. She lowered her stance slightly, not as a gesture of submission, but as a way to appear grounded, steady. Slowly, she raised a hand, palm open, showing Rhynek she would not strike. The cub's eyes narrowed, tracking her movements. Then, surprisingly, he shifted slightly, stepping back, ears twitching. "Good," Leora murmured. "Just watch me, let's see what you've got." Every time he lunged or snapped, she sidestepped gracefully, barely touching him, letting him expend energy. The instructors exchanged glances. It was unusual, no human had ever held a cub's attention for more than a minute without fear showing. Leora's poise was unnerving. Minutes passed. Leora stayed calm, never raising her voice or panicking. Rhynek sniffed at her hand, growled once more, but the edge in his eyes softened. A connection began to form, subtle and delicate. The cub tested boundaries, and she met him step by step, respecting his strength while showing her own quiet confidence. "You see, Rhynek," she said softly, "we can work together, not against each other." He had been raised to fight, to dominate, yet here was someone who did not shrink but did not challenge him recklessly. There was a new game unfolding, one that required thinking, patience, and observation, skills humans had that even the fiercest predators often overlooked. Other cadets watched, some in disbelief, others in growing admiration. Slowly, the cub's posture relaxed. He circled once more, sniffing her, and then nudged her hand with his snout, a small gesture almost like acceptance. Leora smiled. "Good boy," she whispered. "See, nice try, Rhynek, nice try. You survived." That was what made them unpredictable, a quality many predators respected, even if they would not admit it openly. The exercise continued for the rest of the morning. Leora and Rhynek moved through obstacle courses, practicing coordination and basic combat drills. While other cadets relied on brute strength, Leora relied on observation. She noticed Rhynek's patterns, his preferred pounce angles, the slight twitch of his tail when he was about to strike. She anticipated his moves and used them to guide both of them through the exercises efficiently. By midday, word had spread. Cadets whispered in small groups. "The human, she's controlling the cub, somehow. Did you see?" She didn't even flinch when it snarled at her. Even the instructors began to watch more closely, their curiosity piqued. During lunch, Leora sat alone, eating quietly, but her mind was already planning for the next exercises. Rhynak rested nearby, alert but calm. Occasionally, he would glance at her, ears twitching. Their connection was subtle but growing. She understood him better than most aliens could understand their own cubs. The afternoon exercises tested endurance. Cadets had to navigate a course filled with moving obstacles while maintaining control over their assigned cubs. Many predators relied on brute force to push through obstacles, but their cubs often resisted, throwing the whole team off balance. Leora and Rhynak moved in sync. When Rhynak hesitated, she adjusted, signaling him with subtle gestures. He followed, surprisingly obedient. One of the instructors called out from the observation deck, "A human and a cub working as one? This is unprecedented." The bond with Rhynak was a start, but it was only the beginning. As the sun dipped lower, casting an orange glow over the academy, the final exercise began, a sparring match between cadet pairs, cubs included. Leora's opponent was a larger predator trainee named Kale, known for his aggressive style. Kale's cub was equally ferocious, snarling and leaping at every opportunity. The other trainees assumed the human would be overwhelmed almost instantly. Kale lunged. Rhynak leapt with him. Leora dodged nimbly, guiding the cub away from danger while subtly redirecting Kale's momentum. She was not stronger, but she was smarter, using timing and strategy instead of brute force. Every move was calculated, anticipating both predator instincts and the cub's reactions. Minutes passed in a tense rhythm. Sweat ran down Leora's brow, but her grin never faltered. "Nice try," she muttered under her breath each time Kale's cub snapped at her. The cub's frustration grew, but she remained calm, showing no fear. Finally, the match ended. Leora had not only survived, but maneuvered her team more efficiently than anyone else. Kale stumbled, frustrated, while Rhynak nudged her side, as if to say, "We did it together." The instructors stared, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding in reluctant respect. "Enough for today," Tark announced. "The human has shown potential, more than expected." "Nice try," she said, and the cub growled softly, but in a way that felt like approval rather than threat. As she left the arena, other cadets gave her sidelong glances. Some were impressed, some annoyed, but all had to acknowledge one thing: this human was different. Small, fragile-looking, and yet somehow unstoppable in ways they did not understand. The sun set over Zartok Prime, painting the black stone towers in fiery reds and golds. Leora looked up at the sky, imagining the stars beyond the academy, the worlds she could one day explore. She smiled. Tomorrow she would face new challenges, and Rhynak would be with her. Together they would continue proving that humans could thrive where others doubted them. And as she whispered softly to the cub, "Nice try," she knew it was more than a joke. It was a lesson for the cub, for herself, and for everyone watching. Courage, patience, and cleverness were human strengths, and today the galaxy had taken its first notice. The next morning, the air was thick with anticipation. The academy buzzed with the energy of cadets moving between training fields, their armor clinking and claws scraping across the stone floors. Even the youngest predator cubs seemed more alert than usual, their ears twitching, eyes scanning for movement. Leora arrived early, her braids swaying as she walked with quiet confidence. Rhynak trotted beside her, tail flicking, muscles coiled like springs. Today's session was different. It wasn't just about obedience or survival, it was a test of understanding. The instructors wanted to see whether cadets could read their cubs, anticipate behavior, and adapt strategies. Most cadets relied on brute force, but Leora had already shown that subtlety and intelligence could achieve far more. "Pair off," the instructors called, their deep voices echoing across the arena. "Today, your skill is measured not by power but by control and coordination. Let the cubs lead you as much as you lead them." She had already learned one truth: strength was not only in muscle, it was in mind, in observation, in patience. Her first challenge appeared almost immediately. Kale, still bitter from their last exercise, approached with his cub, a young predator nearly twice the size of Rhynak. "Ready to lose again?" he sneered, baring sharp teeth. His cub growled in agreement, ears pinned back, claws scraping the floor. Leora met his glare evenly. "We'll see who learns the most today," she said softly, patting Rhynak's shoulder. The cub nudged her, and she could feel the slight tension in his muscles relaxing. He trusted her, and that trust would be everything in the next few hours. The first exercise was simple in theory. Navigate a maze filled with moving obstacles, sudden pitfalls, and hidden hazards. The goal was to reach the center platform without letting the cub panic or lash out. Simple, except that most predator cubs were impulsive and aggressive, and most cadets tried to fight or push through obstacles. Kale and his cub charged ahead, relying on sheer force. The cub leaped over walls, smashed through barriers, and knocked aside obstacles, but Kale struggled to keep up. The combination of raw power and lack of subtle control caused the cub to trip twice, and Kale stumbled, frustrated and angry. Leora, in contrast, moved slowly, deliberately. She studied Reinak's movements, watching how his tail twitched before a jump, how his ears flattened when he was nervous. She adjusted her pace, guiding him through narrow passages with quiet gestures, whispering encouragements. The cub's growls were soft, almost conversational, as if he were asking for confirmation before taking each step. "Good, good," she murmured, patting his side. "See. We can do this together." The next exercise tested patience. Cadets had to remain still while the cubs roamed freely, responding only when necessary to prevent accidents. Many humans would have panicked or overreacted, startling the cubs into chaos. But Leora stayed calm, watching every twitch, every glance, every sniff. She learned to anticipate when Reinak might jump or snap, redirecting him with subtle body movements or soft words. After 10 minutes, Reinak sat beside her without a single aggressive gesture. He licked her hand once and nudged it, as if saying, "I understand you. I trust you." Leora smiled. "Good boy," she whispered, and for the first time a few cadets saw not a fragile human but a leader earning loyalty without force. It wasn't long before the instructors introduced a new challenge: pair exchanges. Cadets would temporarily switch cubs to test adaptability. Leora watched as other humans struggled with larger, more aggressive cubs, panicking or overreacting to even minor growls. She understood immediately that this would be the true test. Could she read another cub as quickly as she had read Reinak? Her new partner cub was named Tharak, a bright-eyed, copper-furred juvenile with a reputation for biting anyone who got too close. Leora approached carefully, letting him sniff her, observing his posture, the tension in his legs, the flick of his tail. Tharak growled softly, crouched low, ready to strike. Most humans would have taken a step back. Leora did not. "Nice try," she said softly, echoing her words with Reinak. This time the words were directed at the cub, acknowledging his aggression without fear. Tharak tilted his head, ears flicking, unsure of this strange human who did not flinch. She mirrored the cub's movements, not confronting but guiding. When he lunged, she sidestepped gracefully, letting him expend energy without harm. When he hesitated, she leaned slightly forward, showing patience and confidence. Within minutes, Tharak's growls softened, replaced by cautious sniffing and tentative steps toward her. The instructors watched closely. Few humans could achieve this level of control over even a single predator cub, let alone two with different temperaments. Leora's combination of calm, observation, and quick thinking was becoming impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Kale watched in growing frustration. His brute force approach failed again, and he could see the stark difference between relying on strength and relying on intelligence. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Some of the younger cadets even began to murmur, "Maybe humans aren't so weak after all." Leora and Reinak had spent hours in exercises that tested reflexes, observation, and patience. Yet neither showed signs of frustration or giving up. Reinak, normally impatient and volatile, followed her instructions with minimal prompting. The bond between them had grown into something noticeable, an unspoken understanding that made even the instructors raise an eyebrow. The final test of the day was unexpected, a free play exercise. Cadets were allowed to interact with their cubs without formal instructions, encouraged to experiment with strategies. Most cadets treated it as a game of dominance, showing off strength and agility. Leora used it differently. She let Reinak lead for the first few minutes, observing his instincts and patterns. When he tried a sudden leap toward an obstacle, she anticipated it, moving in sync so that he landed safely. When another cub from a neighboring team lunged aggressively at Reinak, she guided him out of harm's way, diffusing tension without confrontation. By evening, word had spread throughout the academy. The human cadet and her cub were exceptional. Not because of strength or speed, but because of courage, intelligence, and empathy, traits the aliens respected even if they rarely admitted it. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of red and orange, Leora sat on a low stone wall with Reinak curled beside her. She scratched behind his ears, feeling the small, rapid beats of his muscles relaxing. "You did well today," she said softly. "See. Nice try, but we'll get even better tomorrow." Tark, the stern trainer, spoke to one of his colleagues. She's unusual, he said. Not the strongest, not the fastest, but she sees things we do not, and the cubs, they respond to her. She only thought of the next challenge, the next exercise, and the next day to prove herself. Kale's glare from across the training ground did not faze her. Some would always doubt, some would always underestimate. But she had learned one truth in the academy already. The galaxy respected those who did not fear, those who thought, and those who cared. She whispered once more to Rhynak, "Nice try," and the cub nudged her hand again, a silent agreement. Tomorrow they would face new obstacles, and Leora was ready. The night descended over Zartok Prime, cool and quiet. Cadets retreated to their quarters, exhausted but alive with thoughts of the day's lessons. Leora gazed at the stars above the academy, imagining worlds far beyond this one, full of unknown challenges, full of opportunities. And in her mind, she smiled. The predator cub had snarled at her once, and she had faced it without fear. The instructors had doubted her, the other cadets had scoffed, but she had shown them all something they could not ignore. Humans were small, yes, but they were clever, brave, and unpredictable. Tomorrow, the academy would test them again, and Leora, with Rhynak at her side, would meet it head-on. Because in the galaxy, survival was only the first step. Thriving and proving that humans belonged was the real challenge. The morning air carried a strange tension as cadets gathered in the largest training arena the academy had to offer. The field was massive, stretching far beyond what the eye could see, with towering walls, uneven terrain, and hidden hazards designed to challenge even the most experienced predator cadets. Today was no ordinary exercise. Today was the trial of the arena, a test that separated the clever from the reckless, the patient from the impulsive, and, as some whispered, humans from predators. Leora arrived with Rhynak moving silently at her side. Even after weeks of training, she felt a thrill of nervousness. The trial was different from drills or maze exercises. It was survival, strategy, and instinct all at once. The cubs were not merely partners, they were unpredictable forces of nature, ready to attack or defend at the slightest signal. Other cadets eyed her as she entered. Some sneered, certain she would fail spectacularly. Kale's glare followed her across the arena, his cub pacing aggressively at his heels. The instructors' deep voices carried across the arena, booming with authority. "Cadets, the trial begins. Navigate the arena, maintain control over your cub, and survive all challenges. Your skill will be measured by cooperation, not by brute force. Begin." The arena was alive with energy, and the smaller humans seemed like ants among giants. Leora tightened her grip on Rynak's harness and scanned the field. Survival would depend on anticipation, observation, and quick thinking. She had trained for this moment. The first obstacle was a series of moving platforms over a deep pit. Most cadets charged ahead, relying on instinct and brute strength. Their cubs followed, leaping without precision, causing some cadets to stumble or fall. Leora observed carefully. She noted the timing of the platforms, the cubs' weight distribution, and how Rhynak preferred to jump. "Rhynak, follow my lead," she whispered. Her voice was calm, firm, but not commanding. She took the first step, landing lightly on a platform. Rhynak leapt after her, landing with surprising precision. The other cubs watched, curious, while Leora adjusted her movement subtly to guide him across. A sudden attack from another cub sent a trainee sprawling, claws scratching against the stone. Leora's eyes flicked instantly. She shifted Rynak's position, stepping between the cub and her partner, redirecting the aggression without a single strike. Rhynak growled low, but she whispered, "Nice try," and the cub backed off, confused by the unexpected calmness. Cadets stumbled and yelled, their frustration rising. Leora moved steadily, using her small size to her advantage. She could slip through gaps the larger predators could not, anticipate the cub's movements, and avoid confrontations. By mid-morning, it became clear to some observers that her approach was unorthodox, but effective. The second challenge involved sudden ambushes. Trainers had hidden mechanisms that could trigger cubs into defensive or aggressive behavior. Most cadets panicked, shouting or swinging weapons, startling the cubs further. Leora stayed composed. She observed patterns, how a cub twitched before pouncing, how their tails swished when uncertain. When a cub lunged suddenly at her, she sidestepped calmly, letting it expend energy harmlessly. Rhynak mirrored her movements, showing trust and responsiveness. A few cadets began to murmur among themselves. "The human, she isn't fighting them, she's working with them." One predator cub, frustrated by the lack of resistance, froze in place, trying to understand this unusual human. Leora smiled inwardly. This was exactly what she wanted: to anticipate, to adapt, to guide rather than overpower. Halfway through the trial, the arena opened into a wide field with uneven terrain, including hidden pitfalls and small cliffs. Here, speed could be an advantage, but recklessness could mean disaster. Kale's approach was obvious: charge forward, rely on force, and push through obstacles. He stumbled multiple times, the cub pulling unpredictably, causing frustration to rise with every misstep. Leora approached carefully, scanning the field. She noticed subtle cues in Reinak's body language: a slight shift of weight, ears flicking, tail twitching, that indicated hesitation or aggression. She adjusted her pace and position, giving Reinak confidence to move. When another cub from a different pair charged, she guided Reinak to the side, avoiding confrontation while subtly using the terrain to block the aggressor. By mid-afternoon, exhaustion set in for many cadets. Sweat ran down brows, muscles ached, and some cubs were becoming impatient. Leora felt the strain, but her mind remained clear. She focused on observation, anticipation, and adaptation. Every movement was deliberate, every decision considered. She was not the fastest nor the strongest, but she was one step ahead of the challenges the arena presented. Then came the final phase, a coordinated challenge where multiple cubs were unleashed simultaneously, and cadets had to guide their partners through a complex maze filled with hazards, moving obstacles, and hidden ambush points. Chaos erupted instantly. Predators relied on instinct and force, shouting commands, swinging, and trying to dominate the cubs. Many cadets fell behind, their cubs growing more agitated by the panic around them. Leora took a deep breath, feeling Reinak's muscles tense against her side. "We can do this," she whispered, her voice steady. The cub growled low but followed her lead. She moved deliberately through the maze, using observation to anticipate both obstacles and cub behavior. When a cub lunged at Reinak from the side, she sidestepped gracefully, guiding Reinak past danger. Another cub jumped onto a platform ahead. She slowed Reinak, letting it land first, avoiding conflict. The instructors watched in astonishment. Few cadets could navigate this section without injury or panic. Leora and Reinak moved almost in harmony, anticipating each other, avoiding danger, and adapting constantly. Every small movement was calculated. Every gesture communicated understanding. Kale's frustration grew visibly. His brute force approach failed repeatedly. His cub, tired and confused, began to refuse commands. Leora noticed, and for a moment her mind considered whether she could help another cadet. But she focused on her own trial. This was her moment, her challenge, her chance to prove that human intellect and empathy could surpass raw power. Near the end of the trial, a sudden trap was triggered, a collapsing bridge over a pit, designed to test balance and coordination. Most cadets panicked, pushing their cubs and nearly falling themselves. Leora froze for a heartbeat, assessing the situation. She saw the cub preparing to leap instinctively. She adjusted her stance, whispered softly to Reinak, and guided him across with a combination of subtle movements and reassurance. The bridge held, and they crossed safely. Finally, the exit appeared ahead, marked by two tall, glowing pillars. Cadets surged toward it, some scrambling, some moving carefully. Leora's approach was deliberate, steady, controlled. Reinak matched her pace perfectly, ears flicking, tail twitching in concentration. The other cubs followed their instincts, sometimes charging, sometimes hesitating. Leora anticipated, adjusted, and guided until she and Reinak stepped out of the arena without a single misstep. A stunned silence fell over the arena. Most cadets had struggled, some had failed, but Leora and Reinak had navigated every challenge with precision, intelligence, and calm. The instructors' deep voices carried across the field. "Human cadet, exemplary performance. Unorthodox but effective. Note this method for future training." "Nice try." The cub nudged her hand, tail flicking in satisfaction. It was not just obedience. It was trust, loyalty, and understanding. Tark, the stern instructor who had been observing, approached. "Few cadets, even alien ones, have shown such understanding. You and your cub have something rare, not strength, not speed. Intelligence, patience, and adaptability. Qualities that survive in ways power cannot." The human had done what they thought impossible. She had turned a dangerous trial into a display of skill, intelligence, and partnership. Even as she walked, she knew the challenges ahead would only grow. The Academy had many more trials, more tests, and eventually, a final challenge that would determine not just survival, but respect and recognition. She glanced at Reinak, who walked beside her, tail brushing against her leg. Together, they had proven something vital. Humans could not only survive, They could excel, even in a world built for predators. Night fell over Zartok Prime. The stars gleamed above the black towers of the Academy, far brighter than Leora had imagined. She lay on her bed in the human quarters, thinking of the arena, the cubs, and the whispers of instructors. Kale's glare, Tark's nod, the odd looks from other cadets, they all meant something. She smiled softly, thinking of Rhynak curled near the door. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "we'll do even better. Nice try, Rhynak." The trial of the arena was over, but the journey was far from complete. Leora knew that the next challenge would be harder, more dangerous, and more important. Yet she also knew this truth. Humans could adapt, humans could learn, and humans could inspire. And in a galaxy that often doubted them, sometimes underestimated them, that was more than enough. The day of the grand duel arrived with a tension that seemed to vibrate through the air. The training arena had been transformed for the final test. Towering walls now enclosed the space, platforms rose and fell, and mechanical obstacles created an ever-changing battlefield. Every cadet knew the grand duel was unlike any exercise they had faced before. It was the ultimate test, a demonstration of skill, strategy, and courage. Success meant respect. Failure was remembered for a long time in the Academy, often spoken of with whispers and harsh lessons. Leora stood at the edge of the arena with Rhynak, her heart steady but her mind alert. She had trained for months, endured skeptical stares, and proved herself in countless exercises. But this was different. This was a challenge designed to push even the most capable cadets to their limits. She glanced at the other participants. Many were towering predators, muscles rippling their cubs at their side, eyes bright with aggression and determination. Among them, Kale stood out, his jaw tight, his posture rigid, clearly annoyed at having been outperformed before. Rhynak nudged her hand with his snout, a quiet reminder that they were partners. Leora smiled and whispered softly, "We'll do this together, remember what we practiced. Nice try." The cub growled softly in reply, a low, steady sound that meant trust and readiness. The instructors' deep voices carried across the arena, booming with authority. "Grand duel begins. Cadets and their cubs, demonstrate your mastery. Strength, intelligence, and control will all be tested. Survive, excel, and prove your worth. Begin." Mechanical obstacles shifted, platforms tilted, and hidden traps tested the reflexes of cadets and cubs alike. Many charged ahead recklessly, relying on strength and instinct. Their cubs followed, some panicking, others overreacting. Leora moved carefully, Rhynak at her side, observing, anticipating, and guiding. The first challenge was a series of narrow platforms suspended above deep pits. Cadets with larger cubs attempted to charge across, relying on brute force, but missteps were common. Leora, however, moved with precision, noticing the subtle shifts in Rhynak's weight and tail. She whispered guidance, and the cub leapt confidently from platform to platform. Their coordination was smooth, almost seamless. Other cadets stumbled, some falling or grabbing at obstacles desperately. A sudden ambush of mechanical dummies sprang from the walls, meant to trigger defensive reactions from the cubs. Many panicked, but Leora remained calm. She anticipated Rhynak's response, sidestepping when he lunged instinctively, guiding him safely past each hazard. Her voice was soft, her words minimal, but each one conveyed trust and confidence. The cub responded instantly, learning from her cues rather than acting solely on instinct. Midway through the arena, a group of predator cubs from different teams converged, their aggression heightened by the shifting platforms and loud noises. Kale's cub lunged toward Rhynak, and Kale shouted a command, but the cub ignored him, confused by the chaos. Leora acted quickly. She positioned herself between the two cubs, guiding Rhynak away while subtly using her smaller size to slip past the aggression. Rhynak growled low, but she whispered, "Nice try," and he calmed, following her lead. The other cub hesitated, then shifted its attention elsewhere, baffled by the unexpected human calmness. By mid-afternoon, fatigue began to show. Many cadets were sweating, muscles straining, while their cubs grew restless. Leora's endurance was tested as well, but she focused on observation and strategy rather than brute force. Every movement was intentional. She noticed patterns, the slight twitch before a jump, the subtle narrowing of eyes before a strike, and used them to anticipate challenges before they became dangerous. The arena opened into a wide clearing filled with uneven terrain, rising pillars, and hidden pitfalls. Here, speed and precision were critical. Kale charged forward, relying on strength and aggression. His cub followed blindly, nearly tipping off several cadets in its path. Leora approached cautiously, studying Rhynak's reactions and the behavior of the other cubs. She adjusted her pace and guided him with subtle gestures, allowing him to respond instinctively while maintaining control. Then came the final phase, a complex maze where cadets had to navigate multiple levels, avoid hazards, and coordinate their cubs through challenges while contending with unexpected interference from other teams. Most cadets panicked immediately, shouting commands, swinging, and attempting to dominate their cubs. Many failed, tripping over obstacles, startling their cubs, or running into traps. Leora, however, remained calm. She moved deliberately, Rhynak close, anticipating each challenge. When another cub charged, she sidestepped, guiding Rhynak around the obstacle. When a collapsing platform threatened to throw them into a pit, she adjusted her balance, whispered softly, and moved forward with Rhynak following precisely. The combination of human intelligence, patience, and subtle communication allowed them to navigate the maze more efficiently than anyone else. Kale's frustration was growing. His approach of aggression and force was failing repeatedly, and his cub was becoming unresponsive, tired, and confused. Leora noticed, but she focused on her own path, keeping Rhynak safe and attentive. This was not just about surviving the grand duel, it was about demonstrating the power of observation, strategy, and partnership. Finally, the exit appeared ahead, marked by two glowing pillars. Cadets surged toward it, some clumsily, some with careful strategy. Leora and Rhynak approached steadily, moving in perfect coordination. They had avoided every trap, anticipated every challenge, and adapted to every unexpected obstacle. Other cadets watched in awe as the small human and her cub emerged ahead of many larger, more aggressive teams. A stunned silence fell over the arena. The instructors' voices carried across the field. Human cadet, exceptional performance. You have not relied on strength or brute force, but on intelligence, patience, and adaptability. This is a rare quality. Your method is unconventional, but highly effective. She had turned the grand duel into a demonstration of skill, trust, and understanding. The cubs had followed her cues not out of fear, but out of respect and partnership. Rhynak nudged her hand gently, tail flicking in contentment. "Good boy," she whispered. "See, nice try." The words had become more than a joke. They were a motto, a reminder that patience and cleverness could overcome any obstacle. As the cadets gathered afterward, whispers spread through the arena. The human, she controlled the cubs without force. She teaches them without trying. Even Kale stood silently, jaw tight, unable to hide his grudging respect. Tark, the stern instructor, approached, his eyes narrowed but thoughtful. Few cadets, even aliens, could navigate the grand duel with such precision. You have not only survived, but excelled. You understand your cub, and through that, you understand strategy itself. The galaxy may need more humans like you. Now she had proven that humans could do more than endure. They could thrive, adapt, and inspire. As evening descended, painting the towers of Zartok Prime in shades of red and gold, Leora walked with Rhynak at her side. The other cadets whispered and stared, some in awe, some in disbelief, but all had witnessed something unusual. A human had not only survived the grand duel, but had outperformed most of her peers. In the quiet of the night, Leora sat with Rhynak curled beside her, reflecting on the day's events. She could feel the exhaustion in her muscles, the tension in her shoulders, but also the thrill of accomplishment. Together, she and Rhynak had achieved something remarkable. It was more than a victory, it was proof that humans could compete in a universe built for predators. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be missions, exploration, and tests that would go beyond the academy grounds. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of pride. She had survived the grand duel, earned respect, and strengthened her bond with Rhynak. And as she whispered softly to the cub, "Nice try," Rhynak nudged her hand in response, a silent agreement. They were ready for whatever came next. The academy had tested them, the other cadets had doubted them, but they had shown something undeniable. Humans with courage, intelligence, and patience could hold their own among the galaxy's fiercest warriors. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the towers and fields of Zartok Prime, the stars gleamed like distant promises, waiting for a human who refused to be small, weak, or overlooked. The morning light over Zartok Prime was pale and soft, casting long shadows across the academy grounds. Leora stretched, feeling the familiar ache in her muscles, but a sense of excitement filled her chest. Today was not another exercise, not another duel. Today was the beginning of something greater. The instructors had approached her after the grand duel with an offer few humans ever received. A position in interstellar missions, working alongside alien leaders and exploring worlds that humans had never dreamed of. Rhynak padded quietly beside her as she walked toward the central hall. The cub's muscles rippled under his sleek black fur, and his amber eyes shone with alert intelligence. He had grown stronger, more disciplined, and more attuned to her than ever. Their bond was more than training. It was trust, respect, and partnership. Tark, the stern instructor who had watched her with a mix of skepticism and admiration, met her at the hall entrance. "Cadet Leora," he said, his deep voice carrying the weight of authority, "you have completed the Academy's challenges with distinction. You have not relied on strength alone, but on intelligence, patience, and courage. Your methods are unusual, but highly effective. The galaxy has taken notice." "I only try to understand, not just survive." For so long, she had been doubted, overlooked, and underestimated. Now she had the chance to show the galaxy that humans were not weak, fragile, or helpless. They were clever, brave, and capable of thriving in ways that others often could not predict. The first mission was a diplomatic expedition to the planet Vorin, a world with hostile environments and cultures unfamiliar even to seasoned predators. Leora's task was to act as both observer and strategist, learning the behaviors of alien species and ensuring peaceful interaction. Her human intuition, combined with Reinak's instinct and training, made them uniquely suited for the challenge. As they boarded the sleek Academy shuttle, cadets and instructors waved, some in respect, some in disbelief. Kale's gaze met hers for a moment, a mixture of frustration and grudging admiration. Leora gave him a small nod. He did not respond. He could not yet understand the quiet power of patience, intelligence, and partnership. The shuttle lifted off, engines humming with a deep resonance that vibrated through the floor. Leora felt a thrill as Zartok Prime shrank beneath them. Reinak leaned close, head brushing against her shoulder, sensing her anticipation. "Ready?" she whispered. The cub gave a soft growl, a sound that seemed to mean, "I trust you." Their first encounter on Vorin was immediately challenging. The planet was harsh, with jagged rock formations, sudden storms, and creatures whose behavior was unpredictable. The expedition team included alien diplomats, predator cadets, and specialists, all relying on Leora and Reinak to navigate the unknown. The first task was to establish contact with a local species known as the Vorinths, intelligent beings with a reputation for hostility toward outsiders. Many aliens approached with bluster and intimidation, attempting to assert dominance. Leora observed carefully, noting body language, eye contact, and subtle movements that revealed intention. Reinak mirrored her calm approach, standing beside her, alert but non-threatening. When a Vorinth approached, claws extended, the other cadets stiffened, ready to strike at the first sign of aggression. Leora stepped forward slightly, her posture open, her hands visible. She spoke softly in the universal translator, introducing herself and offering gestures of peace. The Vorinth hesitated, confused by her calm demeanor and subtle confidence. Reinak growled low, a protective but controlled sound. Leora mirrored the cub's energy, showing awareness and respect for the local species' instincts. Slowly, the Vorinth lowered its claws, studying her with cautious curiosity. "Good boy," she whispered to Reinak. "See. Nice try." Hostile terrain tested endurance, sudden storms required quick thinking, and miscommunications among alien teams demanded careful mediation. Each time, Leora relied not on strength, but on observation, adaptation, and calm decision-making. Reinak's instincts complemented hers perfectly, alerting her to danger and responding to subtle cues. Together, they solved problems that others struggled with, earning respect and trust from the expedition team. One day, while exploring a canyon filled with shifting rock formations, a sudden tremor caused a massive boulder to fall, blocking the path of several team members. Panic erupted, cubs barked and growled, and some predators shouted commands that only added to the chaos. Leora froze for a moment, taking in the scene. She assessed the movement of the boulder, the positioning of her cub, and the safest path for the team. "Reinak," she said softly, placing a hand on his side, "we can do this." The cub's muscles tensed, ready to act. Together, they guided the team through the canyon, using subtle movements, clear signals, and calculated risks. The team moved in order, avoiding injury and confusion. By the time they reached a safe clearing, the other cadets and specialists were staring, mouths open. Tark, who had accompanied the mission as an observer, shook his head. "This is remarkable," he said. "You see what others cannot. You adapt where others panic. You survive where others fail. And you do it with patience and partnership." Humans, often underestimated, were being noticed for qualities the galaxy rarely associated with them. Intelligence, creativity, courage, and the ability to thrive in unpredictable situations. Leora's name began to circulate among diplomats and explorers, a symbol of what humans could achieve when given the chance. As weeks passed, the expedition moved to new worlds, each with unique challenges. Some planets had dangerous weather patterns, others had intelligent species with customs difficult to understand. Each time, Leora and Rhynak faced obstacles with calm strategy and quick adaptation. They solved problems without confrontation, earning trust and admiration from species that others had failed to understand. During one mission on a desert planet, a sandstorm trapped the team in a canyon with limited visibility. Many predators panicked, barking commands and attempting to push through blindly. Leora assessed the terrain and used Rhynak's instincts to navigate safely. Together, they guided the team to shelter, using cues and signals that the Cubs and cadets followed without hesitation. By the end of the mission, even Kale had begun to acknowledge her skill, though grudgingly. "I don't understand it," he admitted quietly. "She isn't stronger, yet she achieves more than we do." Leora only smiled. Strength was not the point. Observation, understanding, and trust were, and she had them in abundance. Months passed. Leora's reputation grew, not just among cadets and instructors, but across galaxies. Humans were beginning to be seen in a new light, capable of thriving where others doubted them, surviving and excelling in ways that defied expectation. Leora's quiet confidence, her clever strategies, and her unbreakable bond with Rhynak became legendary. One evening, as the sun set over a peaceful alien world, Leora sat with Rhynak at her side, watching stars twinkle in a sky unfamiliar and vast. She thought about the journey, from the intimidating academy grounds of Zartok Prime to the grand duel to these distant worlds filled with challenges she had once feared. She had grown, learned, and proven that humans were more than their size or strength. Rhynak nudged her hand, tail flicking. "Good boy," she said softly. "See, nice try." The words were no longer a joke. They were a truth, a statement of accomplishment and partnership. Leora's gaze lifted to the horizon, imagining the galaxies yet to explore. Challenges awaited, unknown worlds filled with danger and opportunity. Yet she felt ready. Humans could endure, humans could adapt, and humans could excel. With courage, intelligence, and empathy, they could thrive where others saw only risk. And beside her, Rhynak growled softly, alert, loyal, and ready. Together, they were more than a cadet and a cub. They were a team, a symbol of what humans could achieve in a galaxy that had once doubted them. The stars above seemed to shine brighter that night, as if acknowledging the small human who had proven herself and the cub who had trusted her. Leora smiled, whispering once more, "Nice try," and Rhynak nudged her hand in agreement. The galaxy was wide and full of challenges, but Leora knew this. Humans with courage, cleverness, and patience could face anything. They could not only survive, could inspire, lead, and transform the worlds around them. And somewhere far beyond the known stars, adventures awaited, ready for a human who refused to be underestimated and a predator cub who had chosen to follow her lead.